The board met in closed session, and there are no actions. Let's see.
President Villalobos?
Oh, we're going to do the roll call?
Yes, the flag salute and roll call first.
Yes.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, do you want to do the flag?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And roll call?
Trustee Vidal.
Here.
Trustee Doggett.
Here.
Trustee Levin.
Here.
Trustee Shiakari.
Here.
Trustee Villalobos.
Here.
Thank you.
And then we shall do the approval of the minutes. It is recommended, the district digitally records the audio portion of the meetings. The recorder is located in front of the board scribe. All recordings are kept in the superintendent's office for 30 days and are available during that time period for inspection by members of the public on district equipment without a charge. As a community service, Pacifica Community TV, PCT, records and broadcasts meetings. Approval of the minutes. It is recommended that the board approve the minutes of the August 28th, 2019 regular meeting. Are there any questions regarding the minutes? No. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion approved.
A second? And all those in favor?
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Just checking my facts. Did we report out on closed session?
I believe she reported out in the very beginning, but if we want to clarify, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
So,
Clarify on the closed session report out.
Yes. The board met in closed session regarding conference with labor negotiator, agency negotiator, Heather Olson,
And no action was taken.
and no action was taken.
Thank you.
Approval of the agenda and consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda will be approved with one motion, which is not debatable and which requires a unanimous vote for passage. If any member of the board, the superintendent, or the public so requests, any item shall be removed from this section and placed in the regular order of business following approval of the consent agenda. Are there any questions regarding the items on the agenda or consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda?
I'll move to approve.
Any second?
I'll second.
And all those in favor?
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Whole page and a half.
Communications. Speakers wishing to address the board on items on the agenda or not on the agenda may complete speaker cards and submit them to any member at the staff table. If you are addressing the board on a non-agenda item, please be aware that the provisions of the Brown Act prohibit the board from acting or discussing such matters at this meeting. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person per topic. LSEA? Hello.
How are you guys? I have a scribbled on post-it with the things I hope to remember to say tonight. So last week we had our first union meeting. The vibe of the meeting for the first meeting was a typical first meeting, but a little bit more high stress than usual because, as you know, we don't have all our teachers in place, and teachers are starting to feel the stress of that coming forth. And that is, we still have some teacher positions open, and we're hoping that the board is thinking about attracting and retaining teachers. And unfortunately, we don't have negotiations. Our side set forth some dates earlier in the fall, but our team, we're not meeting until November. So that's kind of disappointing that we have to wait so long till we negotiate. And one of the positive things that we're talking about is the teacher induction plan. So LSEA has a meeting with Maria and Heather at the end of this month, and we're looking forward to that. That's the teacher induction plan is a plan to support our new teachers that we're inducting, obviously, into the school district, but also supporting the teachers who are helping those teachers, because the teacher across the hall and next to you is your number one help on a day-to-day basis. So that plan is going to look at how we can support those teachers as well. And also at the last board meeting, I wasn't here, but I know I looked on the YouTube video and saw that you shared the communication that you had heard from LSEA and our request to meet with you on a semi-regular-ish basis, and we're hoping to hear from you some sort of follow-through on that, because we do really want to meet with you guys on a regular basis. And then Jerry and I were going to finish off the LSEA moment. She's going to come pass out invitations for our back-to-school party. What's the date on there, Jerry? I forget, October 10th?
Thank you. Yeah.
October 10th at Sharp Park. So we hope to see some of you there for our back-to-school party.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And CSEA, do you have any communications?
Nothing tonight.
Thanks, Debbie.
People wishing to address the board? Correspondence?
I do not have it.
And board superintendent communications. Elizabeth, do you want to start?
Sure. Just with school starting, a lot of meetings starting up, of course, as everybody has. So with the first workforce housing meeting, that we'll be going through more of that, I believe, in the agenda tonight. The Pacifica collaboration meeting, they all came back from the summer, and that's always actually a fun meeting to go to once a month. That it's all the different nonprofits in town and find out what everybody's doing. Went to IBL's back to school night, and they're focusing, as I think all the schools are in the district, on more family involvement. So they were starting some extra meetings on that. It was the first time I attended the joint articulation meeting, which was a lot of the city members and Jefferson Union High School, and so that was can be quite interesting. And then on the fun end, the Palmapalooza, which was the resource center, was last Saturday. And it was a sellout, and I know it's not really a school function, but they help all the families in town, and I think they're going to get a little more information out of the schools too. And it was a sellout at the Moose Lodge and 60s theme, and everybody had a good time.
Kathy, do you want to go?
Well, the Library Advisory Committee, they canceled their first meeting, so I didn't get to go. But I did attend the San Mateo School Board meeting about the Equity Network. And that was very informative. I think we're going to gain a lot from that. We're going to bring that back to our students and our teachers. I think it's a really important thing. And I also went to back to school night at Sunset Ridge, and it was mostly a reunion, but it was enjoyable to see kids and the teachers and staff.
I attended Valamar's back to school night, large parent turnout, great presentations by the teachers, spirited PTO. I did share with Heather, I did come away with it afterwards though, thinking about the parent who had come to talk about the cost of the supply list, because of course the PTO had a request, which they all do. And I just started thinking of all the ways our families are giving and giving and giving through the supply list, through the parcel taxes, through the bonds. And, you know, I know that this is just how it is right now in California, but I think it's just good for us all to sort of be aware. And I don't know what can be done other than maybe parents starting to write to Sacramento because, you know, it doesn't start with us. So I think if anything, if we're going to do sort of some parent education, it might be good to remind them to, while we really appreciate everything you're doing for your school, if you really want to make a financial impact, start, pressing the legislators. Also attended our workforce housing, which we'll hear more about later. I attended IBL back to school night also.
I was there too, but as a
Parent role, but
Parent.
all of a sudden I had a moment. Elizabeth and then Kai, we can't all be together. But anyway, again, great turnout. School looked great. I did stop by, I stopped by a lot of kind of party hopped around different classrooms, but stopped in one of the SDC classrooms and again, always really impressed with our special ed providers. Just really great feel, and there was a lot of real good communication with the parents and talking individually about the kids. And it was really nice. And then for a community event, I did go to the police department's open house. They had police dog demonstrations and vehicles. We got to try on the Kevlar vests and sit in police cars, and a lot of young families there, and just a really nice community event. So.
Okay, well, most everything on my list has been mentioned, but I attended the San Mateo County School Boards Association Equity Network, the first meeting. I think there's going to be 3 more, I believe. And that was really good. Super motivational speaker. She was a practitioner originally from Vallejo, and I guess has been at this for a while. She was pretty well polished. And had lots of good resources, and it was very motivational. It was really trying to wake everybody up to the inequities that are out there and the bias that's out there, both overt bias and subconscious bias that we might all have. So that was really good. Looking forward to the next one. I went to the joint articulation meeting with my colleague Elizabeth Bradal, and that was our first one, and it was really nice just talking to our colleagues from Jefferson Union High School District and somebody from the Water District, and Mike O'Neill was there, so that was pretty good. This morning I went to the Lindemar Educational Center open house, and that was really nice, and so it was really good because I guess I went to an open house in the latter part of last year, but this one was a little different because we had Pacifica school volunteers who just recently moved their office into that space was there. There was a representative from San Mateo County Libraries, and then also the Pacifica Resource Center was also represented there. And so it was really nice talking to all of them and seeing them wanting to be involved with the special education community as well. Went to back to school night at Cabrillo, and that was fine. I sort of did the tour. I go there as a parent, but also as a school board member, so I get to see a lot of teachers that I haven't met before. And I think that is about it. Oh, I went to the police open house as well, but I didn't catch you there. So that was
Probably
really
in a
interesting.
mess.
And it was my first time, so it was great. And what I was really interesting was taking a peek into the evidence room. There's all sorts of stuff, surfboards and suitcases and stuff like that. So, no, that was great, and it was nice to talk to some of the officers as well in the community, and sort of discussing a little bit about Fog Fest is coming up and what preparations are they going to do for that, and mentioning to a few of them that I was a school board member, and big smiles and handshaking. That's my report out.
Mine, so I went to Ocean Shores Open House. Believe it or not, this is my first time being assigned to Ocean Shore. I know. And so I went into one of the classrooms, and the teacher and a parent were giving a presentation on the safety of cars and fingerprinting and child seats and how old they need to be before you can switch them to up to a booster. And so there was some questions around that. And so I'm kind of curious to see what the new laws are around the safety of child seats and how much they need to weigh now. And because the next one that I went to was Ortega. And I went to Ortega's PTO meeting on their their open house, and they presented the last year's budget and then this year's budget, which is very interesting to see them side to side, how much money they raised and where the money is going. And the whole auditorium was full. So that's really important that the parents know if they're donating where their money is going directly. And this is the part that I love, is that since it's a meeting for the PTO, and you know the PTO, every parent is a member. They all get a vote on the budget right then and there and approve it. And so I like that. And then the other night they were having the movie night, and I thought, well, I'm going to just stop by and see how the fingerprinting is going. And so Ortega had a list, and she said every time slot was filled, and at the time that I was there, I think it was about 15 parents had already come in and done the fingerprinting, and they still had like 2 hours to go. And the cost was like $50-something. And so I know when I've been fingerprinted for the school districts or foster parenting, we've had to, pay like I think $90, and I was reimbursed, but so I thought that was, a very good price that they got. And that's it.
So the only item that I can remark on that you all haven't remarked on yet is future, is going forward, is that this weekend, Kai is going to 2 Masters in Governance sessions, one all day on Friday and one all day on Saturday, and Jessie and I will join her on Saturday, and these are 8:30 to 4 with some pretty substantial travel time. So looking forward to those 2 meetings. And I'm attending on Saturday with Jessie and Kai, but looking forward to spending the day together with you. Learning to be governing boards.
Masters.
All right, so moving on to presentations, we have the Library Advisory Committee, Cindy Abbott.
Okay, great. It's going, well, I don't have that much on my drive. It should be in this, there it is.
There's a link on the agenda. I don't think it's the same.
This has something embedded in it. It's yeah.
Still, it's giving me that purple, that swirly line.
Still thinking?
It's thinking, yeah. But I have it, I can pull it from,
There's an embedded video in the one that's on the flash drive that we'd like to show you if that can pull up.
yeah, I think that'll pull up. I tested it earlier today, but I have the PDF version.
Okay.
But the YouTube thing will pull up.
Okay, great.
So it's still trying to load the PowerPoint.
Okay.
So I can go off this for now.
Okay, and would I just mention to you when I want it to click? Okay, there's.
No, others.
Looks like a long PowerPoint, but some of it's just title slides. So, good evening, everyone, and thank you for placing this presentation on tonight's agenda. I am Cindy Abbott, and I'm a Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Commissioner and the Chair of the Library Advisory Committee. And I'm really pleased to be here tonight to provide you with an overview of the work that's been taking place for the past 2.5 years with the Library Advisory Group, city staff, and consultants from Group 4. And during this time, the past 2.5 plus years actually, because our first meeting was back in January of 2016, or January of 2017, extensive community outreach has been taking place with regard to library designs and services. And we really appreciated all of the input that's been provided by the community. Some of you know some of this information and what's taken place because several board members of the Board of Trustees here have cycled through our library committee, and we're looking forward to welcoming Kai to our next meeting. We do make a practice, if we don't have something that we really need to respond to that day, we don't hold a meeting. So that's good news for everybody's time. So here's what we'll be talking about today. Towards the end of this presentation, too, the question that most people want to know is what might a new library cost? So we are now at a point where we've got some ballpark numbers for that. So next slide. So I am not going to go all over this in detail, but what we want you to share and to understand is that while the Library Advisory Committee has been meeting for the past 2.5 years, the process for talking about a library goes back 2 decades, really, 2 decades. The San Mateo County Joint Powers Authority was actually formed back there in 1999, so that was 20 years ago. And all of the course of that conversation has been discussion that Pacifica should be moving to 1 library. And the reason for that is that 2 libraries are very expensive to maintain, both from a level of staffing and the resources, the collection, and everything that's involved in keeping 2 physical sites located and operating. As part of the JPA, the San Mateo County Library System provides 60 weekly hours of library services based on a city of Pacifica's size. So there's a standard for all of the cities or towns that are in the JPA. And there's no accommodation for having 2 buildings as we have here in Pacifica. So why do we need a new library? This is why. Existing facilities do not meet the community needs. Though we have 2 buildings, their square footage and the number of hours that are available to staff the library do not make a full-service modern library. And that's been the theme of the presentations that I've been doing and others from the LAC have been doing over the past couple of years, is that today, while we have the buildings and the space and a fabulous staff, it does not make what today a library can offer to the community. If you see, look here, our hours only have 2 days that are overlapping, Wednesdays and Saturdays for when the libraries are both open. Otherwise, you have to always remember what day is it, what library am I trying to go to figure out if the doors will be open or not. Next slide. This is a sample of what we have at the existing Sharp Park Library. And if you scroll down a little bit more there, you'll see that this library, while it's the largest of our 2, is only 7,000 square feet. That's really quite small. It is open only 4 days a week for that total of 30 hours. That 60 hours that's allocated to Pacifica by the JPA is evenly split between the 2 locations. It's quite space constrained. Those are the blocks of services that we have there. We do have a collection and different programming that takes place, but we'd like to see that space filled with more programming and activities that could take place if we had a larger space. One of the nice things about Sharp Park, though, is that it does have the only multi-purpose use program room out of the 2 libraries in the community, and that is a very well-used space. If you've ever tried to book a room there or to use it for a meeting, it's almost impossible to get to. Let's see the next slide. This was an analysis of the library, and Sharp Park was built in 1964. So it is over 50 years old, and that's pretty much the life of a public facility such as a library. Most importantly about this is if you look at that grid there, there's a lot of physical and structural issues related to it. Most of all is that it's not accessible. There was an article in this past week's Pacifica Tribune where Planning Director Tina Wermeister was talking about the library, and one of her reflections was, as she walked there, how difficult it is to get to that library up a very steep hill, limited parking when you get to the top, a very rugged parking area. And if you're going there with your family, strollers, or if you're an adult with disability or mobility issues, it's really hard to get in and out of. And there's nothing that can be done to fix that in its current state. There's also other conditions in the building where all of the systems are either at or beyond their anticipated lifespan. And this was a study that was done back in 2011. Things have not really improved since that time. So at around 7,000 square feet, all of it, because of its somewhat quirky configuration, is also not usable space. There's the entryway, the stairs upstairs, to lead upstairs. So even at 7,000 square feet, we're really not getting that much library space out of it. What's positive about it, though, is its location. It is centrally located in the middle of Pacifica. And regardless of where people live in Pacifica, this is a library that everybody uses. It's well located off of Highway 1. It's around key locations such as schools. Eureka Square is close by, the Beach Boulevard Promenade, the pier. And then again, what's liked about it is its multi-purpose room. So its location is important as being there in Sharp Park. Many people over the years have asked, why don't you just remodel it? Well, because of its current configuration, remodeling would actually end up providing less usable space than we have today, because a major renovation would require it to be made handicapped accessible, and that would take away more square footage that's currently used for programs and the library collection. And everything in it, as I just mentioned, would need to be renovated. Every system would need to be done. So we would basically spend the same amount of money and still have a very small library that doesn't meet our needs. So the site can't support an expansion, but we'll talk about in a bit how a new library is potentially available and buildable on that spot. Next slide. Here's a little bit, even fewer programs and services offered at the Sanchez Library. It is only 4,000 square feet. So if you look at that in total, we only have 11,000 square feet in our city for the two libraries. It too is only open for the 30 hours a week, 4 days. And then next slide. A similar grid showing that this library, though much newer, 1981, and it's the envelope, the building structure itself, and its components are in much better condition because of its age. It's also not in as rugged of an area, being tucked back in the valley. The likes and dislikes, by the way, that are on the side of these two slides were based on all of the community outreach that we did over the past several years, and that's consolidated about what people liked or did not like about each of the two locations. And what came out really clearly was that if you do live in the back of the valley, you love that little local branch library. You can walk to it. It's also close by schools. It has some wonderful children's programming, recognizing that families are located close by. It's used frequently by the seniors who take advantage of it being right across the street in two of the senior housing complexes. So there is much to like about it. It has a nice cozy feel. Again, the concern about it is its small size, and it's so remote being in the back of the valley that most people don't go to that location. Again, most go to Sharp Park, even though the Sanchez space itself and property that it's situated on is a larger area. This building can undergo a small remodel. It is such that a little addition we'll show you in a minute could be added on to the front of it if that's what was decided to be done with this property. Next slide. This is usage data from some of the libraries that are in the JPA. And at the top, there's the city of Pacifica. And you'll see, though we have the largest population in the JPA, our attendance, the number of library visitors, and circulation are lower. And that's because of the size of our libraries. Those are all the 3 key indicators of how you judge a library's programming and is it meeting the community needs. Program attendance, visitors, and circulation. So that's where we know from our numbers that what we have today is not enough. You wonder, some people say libraries are out of date. With the internet, nobody goes to a library, they're not important. But really what we're seeing is, even with technology, libraries are more important than they've ever been. They're community gathering places. They're constantly updating their programmings. They're always relevant to what's happening. You know, there's makers fairs and fix-it programs, all kinds of things that today we can't really bring to our Pacifica libraries. If you get the newsletters, you'll see some great programming that's going on in other locations that we just don't have the space for here in Pacifica. Right below us, there's Half Moon Bay, sister city down the coast. And they recently opened a new library. And since it opened a year ago, August, it's really validated that people still go to libraries. This attendance figure was done at the beginning of the year, and at that time, the attendance at the Half Moon Bay Library had already gone up 70%. From the time that library was the old library to its new expanded size. More programming, just a lot more of activities, room to do things in. And we also know that many Pacificans are now traveling to Half Moon Bay to go to the library. That's a bummer, right? Long drive to go to a great new full-service library. Next slide. So what's happened, though, in the course of the 2.5 years, very different from the model that was originally developed when the JPA was first put together those 2 decades ago, is that we've learned that we need 2 libraries in Pacifica. That's what the community has told us. One of the major reasons that we have heard that things did not pass a couple of years ago when there was a bond measure was that people did not want to give up that branch location in the back of the valley. It does serve the population back there quite well. So the new vision to meet the community needs and to have a full-service modern library here in Pacifica is to have a new full-service library in Sharp Park with the goal of having it be open 7 days a week. We're looking at probably a 25,000 square foot library, so more than double what we have today with our 2 branches together, which again is only 11,000 square feet. And we're looking at an innovative model for the Sharp Park Library that I'll talk about in a minute. For the Sanchez Library. The Sharp Park Library would be able to have more collections, technology, and space for people to really stay and enjoy the library. And that's what we heard people wanted. They do consider it a gathering place. It's not something that you just come and check out a book. They like to stay there. Parents like to go, have their kids roam around in the children's area while they're looking at adult books. We'd like to have some teen space where they could hang out, do homework, all of the things that we can't do today. So this is a very different model here, this new vision of having 2 libraries, but 2/3 of the respondents in outreach that's been done over the past 2.5 years has shown that that's what the community here in Pacifica wants, our large branch and our small branch. We did look, by the way, at over 20 locations for where a library could possibly be. We looked at both public and private locations, and we ended up with coming back to Sharp Park when the architects looked at how could a library be fit onto that hilly site and slope there in Sharp Park. And we'll show you how we're going to do that in a minute. What this strategy has done, though, has left us with that problem that we had right from the beginning with how to operate 2 locations. And so we heard that, and we tried to really think outside of the box about how this could happen. So let's see what Sharp Park will look like now, though. Here's where we are now in our planning. A full-service library at the existing Sharp Park location. We can keep scrolling here. Here's where we were with Sharp Park, limited hours and not very many programs and services. And here's what we're planning for Sharp Park. Teen spaces, a lot more quiet reading areas today in both of our libraries. If you want to read a book or relax at a library, you'll probably be impacted by programming going on. While it's fun to hear, it is very distracting. We're looking at the possibilities of maker spaces and just much larger collections and program rooms than we have today. This, by the way, is what opened in Half Moon Bay. This is what a modern library looks like today with all of these different activities. Quiet areas, multi-purpose rooms, meeting space for small groups and large. And as we can kind of scroll through and see what is being proposed now is, believe it or not, this is the same space that the Sharp Park Library is on today. We didn't stretch it or get any more land there. What the city realized was that there's an easement that they could work with the apartment building that's located behind the library to provide the utility service access that's needed for that property. And they've designed the library with ample parking here. There's 2 levels of parking. And if you want to go on to the next slide, here's how it lays out. So it's really by building up where the hillside is right now, that would become 2 levels of parking. First level accessible from Palmetto, the second level accessed on Pacifica on Hilton Way going up. And the 2 parking spaces would not be connected. That takes up parking spaces. So there would be signage that's available and exists today showing how many spaces are available in each parking level so that you don't go into one if it's all full. And then it's really spread out across the building then. So it's against the land. It's a much better use of the space. And the design for this library, if we want to go to the next here, was designed to fit in with the neighborhood. This design was approved by City Council earlier in the year in February. And again, those first 2 levels are parking. The library sits on 2 levels on top of it. And it's designed to look like a major building we can be proud of while still fitting into both the residential and commercial aspect of the Sharp Park neighborhood. Next slide. Here it is from another angle. It was actually looked at very strategically too with the homes that are around it to make sure that there's green space next to the areas where there's the small cottages that exist in Sharp Park. And from the upper level of the library, I'm not sure if there's one more slide or not, or no. On the upper level, when you're on the top of Hilton Way, interestingly, with all of this new building on it, it's still basically the same height as the library today. Again, it's just using the space much more effectively, the land there, by carving it out and not having the hillside be there. So Sanchez, what are the plans for there? Again, our very small minimal services library, and we can scroll through. Here's what's proposed: to have in some of the space the same library services that exist there today, the same family programming. Probably many parents in the school district are familiar with the story time hours and things. That type of programming would continue here in the library. The most popular library services, by the way, at Sanchez are browsing the collections, picking up holds and drop-offs. And the request is from the community to have it be open 7 days a week. But how are we going to do that in this limited space? So there's a little dotted line there where we could potentially put on a new addition. But in order to keep this library open, we had to look at, can we have partners join us? Our library hours are going to remain that 60 hours a week. And we're going to want to have most of those used over at the full-service library in Sharp Park. So we're looking at partnerships, most likely with the cities of Pacifica's Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Department. And so we're looking at how to divide the space up in the library into a community programming place that would be programmed by PB&R, a library, a lobby area that would be open for all users, be it for a community room or for the library, and then for library materials. Interestingly, the way the shelving is today in the library, even though it looks like, wow, we're really scrunching that space down, which we are, new library shelving tools can be used much more effectively so that the collection can still be maintained there and kept current, even in that smaller space. It has not been determined, though, yet which part of the library would be used for community space or the library programming itself. But we're looking at trying to use this as a much more flexible space, and in addition to the library, to offer even more services to people that are in the back of the valley. The community center on Crespi also has a space shortage, and they're aware of programs. People come and ask to rent space there that they don't really have a room to fit that need. We've talked about, could we carve in some smaller rooms to maybe have space where people can practice music? Or again, some quiet or smaller rooms than what exists today. So we're looking to, throughout the city, how could the Sharp Park Library really expand what we have today, offering both the library and community services. Next one. So here's some more of the things. Next slide. But what's important to this concept is how can we do this with our minimal staffing? And that's going to a concept called the Open Access Library. And this is being done in many libraries now. We're not the only community. Sometimes we think we're the only ones struggling with these things, but many other communities and cities, both in the United States, Canada, and in Europe, are struggling with the same problems that we have here, not enough hours to keep the libraries open. And using technology, we're looking at a way to provide access to the Sanchez Library 7 days a week for 12 hours a day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And that would be similar to using, if you think about going into a bank ATM lobby, you use your bank card to swipe and enter an enclosed space. There are systems that now do that. And why don't we watch, hear a video if it'll play on the... Okay, we'll get our internet going and we'll see. This is a sample of, we've watched videos of folks doing this both in the UK, and this is a library that's in Ventura that a couple of years ago started rolling out this system. Exact same reasons we had. They didn't have enough staffing. They wanted the library open more. Oh, it's there somewhere.
Okay, you go back.
I know that's got the sound. We'll get the. There we go.
With this comprehensive solution, the library is open for additional express hours most weekday mornings, providing enhanced convenience for this community. While originally only budgeted to be open 24 hours per week, Ventura saw Open Plus as a way to provide basic library services and increase hours in spite of limited staffing. Opened in December of 2017, the Hill Road Library is now open 30% more of the time, providing extended access to community spaces and library collections. Users can check out laptops, use Wi-Fi, meet and collaborate, check out print and electronic collections, and access research materials. The community values the Ventura County Library and appreciates the ability to use it at times more convenient to them. In the spring of 2018, Ventura saw a 78% increase in library usage. With the help of Open Plus by Biblioteca, Ventura County Library provides extended access to self-service library users and better meets the needs of their diverse, growing community.
So again, what happens, people come in, swipe their cards. The library would be able to program who's in the library at different times. They would also be able to track who was there in case there was a problem.
If you've been watching this channel for a while, you might have realized that the most interesting and useful psychological tricks that we talk about.
What are you watching?
The things that follow YouTube videos.
Video on YouTube, I guess, after the library.
So there's been things that happen today in the library where they're already using technology. You can self-check out your books, you can self-check out laptops. So this is just really the next extension of things that you could do there with your library card. And there's been some questions about the security and safety. What the communities have found that have been implementing these programs is it actually gives the community more of a sense of ownership of it. They've been entrusted to this space and they take care of it. They watch who's in there, they take care of it, they make sure that nothing's happening. There would be cameras in the library as well, and again, it's by swipe card, so folks would know who is in and out. You would have to have a library card to be able to get in. And of course, more people than already have library cards will want them with our 2 new great libraries here in town. And there would be access. If it's a time when the library is not staffed by a librarian, there would be a way that you could communicate with the main branch for troubleshooting or answering a question.
Cindy, we're a half hour into the presentation. We have to move on to
Okay, I'm so sorry about that. So what we wanted to just show you then was the last one is we now have a website up. Hopefully you all got this postcard mailing talking about the new library. It has the website on it. And please check it out and share with people. This is going to be coming to City Council again in October or November to talk about the timing of potentially voting on a $45,000 to $50,000 bond for the community to complete this project. Thank you for extending the time. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the library? Proposed library?
Well, I like libraries. I'm excited.
Me too.
I think we have some library lovers on this board.
Love we do. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to district business. District goals. The district values the goals provided in our Local Control Accountability Plan, LCAP, and strategic plan. All of our district board agenda items are tied to these goals. One or more goals are listed in the description of each board agenda item. The details for each of those district goals can be accessed on our Agenda Online public page or by visiting the district website, www.pacificasd.org, under District Information, Board of Trustees. 11A, approval of exclusive right to negotiate agreement Pacifica School District Workforce Housing Project with Bridge Housing Corporation, LCAP Goals Operations. Josie.
Thank you, and we are asking the board as an action item tonight to approve an exclusive right to negotiate agreement with Pacifica School District and Bridge Housing. We kind of left off in May of last school year continuing to talk about the workforce housing project, and at that time in June we had a special meeting with the board to talk about the response to proposal. And I also want to mention that Ken is here tonight to attend to talk about this item as well. So in June, we left off where we did have one respondent, Bridge Housing, and the board did authorize staff to continue to work through the summer with Brookwood advisors on writing this exclusive right to negotiate, and John Byers was our representation throughout the summer. And so tonight, what we do have attached for you is the agreement that we kind of hashed out through the summer with the help of John Niblin and Brookwood. We did meet with the Workforce Housing Committee last week and reviewed this with the Workforce Housing Committee. And we're bringing it to the board tonight. And Mr. Ken Klebanoff is here from Brookwood. Should there be any questions, or is there anything that you want to add, Ken, to the presentation?
No, I'll gladly answer any questions. Basically, what the agreement is an agreement to come to agreement. It sets forth the terms. There's a 120-day period, and August 7th is our start date. Under the terms of the agreement, we've agreed not to meet with others during that time frame. This was basically put in place primarily at Bridge's request in order for them to feel comfortable in investing in time and money as we go through these initial steps. So it's a very straightforward agreement, just in terms of what it covers. It indicates that all expenses that are related to this time frame would be at Bridge Housing's expense, and any expenses that Pacifica would incur would also be Pacifica's expense.
Does anybody have any questions about the contract? I know we worked a lot before the end of the school year and summer and the Workforce Housing Committee. So this is an action item. Do we have a motion to approve the exclusive right to negotiate agreement Pacifica School District Workforce Housing Project with Bridge Housing Corporation?
How much to approve?
I'll second. All those in favor?
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and also thank you for attending one of the members from our committee, too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Have a good night.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Good night.
Okay. Report on opening of school and student enrollment, and this goal is operations. Maria?
Yes. Good evening. Today I have some information to share with you about this first month of school.
You want to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, please. While Will is pulling up the slides, I can just share with you what's coming up first is a table of the current enrollment as of last week. Actually, I have a slight update to share with you because things change that rapidly, sometimes from day to day.
We have to show the PDF version of it. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Because my PowerPoint's not coming up.
Okay.
It's like keeps getting
That's
that
fine.
colorful
It's
little
okay.
wheel.
It's okay. Just can you go to the next one? Because that's just the page one there. Okay, so that might be a little hard to see from the screen. There you go. Oh, thank you, Will. So let me just point out a few of the things that you'll see on this table. You can see that last week when I submitted this for the board packet, the total enrollment of children not in special education were 3,040. Today they were 3,036. So that brought our total number as of today to 3,131. But it's been floating around that number, plus or minus, 3 or 4 for most of the past year. So I think that's pretty stable at this point. Many of you mentioned back to school nights. I wanted to also point out that we are at +1, which is that, kind of special situation that we invoke when we have a sibling group we need to place that needs a seat in only 4 classes in the district, which is a significant drop from last year. And so at this point, we only have 4 children in a +1 situation. Josie and I have talked about doing a facilities review later in the fall and early spring, because one of the things that we have talked about for next year is to have any overflow students be placed not always at the same school, but to rotate that school around, so that one school doesn't always have the burden of having students who really don't, really it's not their first choice or second or third choice in many cases. So that will be something that we'll be implementing for this year. We're also exploring different enrollment processes and different enrollment programs that we might want to implement in the next few years. We're moving a lot of other systems into the digital age, and so we'd like to take a look at moving the enrollment process as well into something a little more efficient, a little less subject to human error, and hopefully a little more accessible for families and easy for them to manage. So that is that. On the side margin there, you'll see the margin to the right. What we listed for you is the class size average across grade levels. So you'll have lower elementary class sizes at Cumberlow, for example. K3 class size average is 24 and a little over. At Ocean Shore, 24.25. At Ortega, 22.9. At Sunset Ridge, in 3rd grade, 23.3. And K-3, 23.3, and at Valley Mar, K-2, 23.7, and so on. So you can see what the average class size is across in the lower grades. And then district-wide, we're at 23.15. So our classes are pretty full, but not overly full, and we are pretty tightly staffed also. So I think we kind of landed in a good place. It's quite a balancing act at times, but a lot of it was thanks very much to the close monitoring of the Pupil Services Department, Nicole Ortega, and communication between her and myself and Dr. Olson constantly during those very busy enrollment times. On the next page, I pulled out for you a little bit of information particular to our special programs enrollment. So you'll see that we have currently in our preschool program 19 students. We have in our we're moving our language to be a little less traditional. So in our strategic support programs or the mild to moderate programs, we have 38 students. These are students who are in separate classes. These are not students who are receiving pull-out resource services. And in our intensive support or the moderate severe classes, we have a total of 14 students enrolled across the district in separate classes. So that is, and then we have only 5 students in non-public schools, which is that's a good thing. In total, we're in special education overall in the district, we are at about a little over 11% enrollment, and that is a little over 1% over the district, the statewide average. So we want to keep working on bringing that number down. Statewide average is about 10%. So, okay. The next page, I just have a little summary about some other just interesting items about enrollment. We have, of our inter-district transfers, we had 140 incoming inter-district transfers from the districts that I've listed there for you. The districts whose names have a star
And next to them are the districts who are the most frequent feeders to us. But you can see we have students even from across the bay and down the peninsula. And then we have 57 outgoing students. Interestingly, there isn't a cluster in any particular district of students coming from any particular district or two. They're pretty evenly distributed across the region. So kids who are leaving the district are going all over. Kids who are coming into the district are mostly coming from our neighbors. We do have a net gain of about 83 students for inter-district transfers. Our homeschool program, which someday soon I'd like to share with you more detail just about that program in particular. I did a report for the state of California on the homeschool program during the summer, and so it kind of caused me to look a little deeper into what we're doing with that program, and it's a really marvelous program. I was really so happy to see the kinds of services that we're able to provide for students from the region. It's a valuable service that we're providing to the region. So so that was a great kind of an eye-opener for me. We are serving 28 students from all over the Bay Area in that program. And then with regard to our own students who are on wait lists, these are students who are waiting for an internal transfer to a school that they have requested. So they may have landed not in their first choice or second choice school, and we have 169 students on a wait list. So the word wait list can be a little deceiving. It makes it sound like they're waiting to get into the district. It's not the case. They all have a seat. They're waiting to get into the school that they would like to prefer to be in, their first choice school.
Maria, can I ask a question now, or do you want me to wait till
No, that's
after?
fine.
I'm just curious for the internal transfer request. That seems high to me. Maybe it's just that I've never seen that number before, but I'm just wondering, do you know why they want to switch?
I think sometimes it's proximity to their home. If they happen to get their second or third choice and it's not close to home. Sometimes it's just they have their heart set on a certain school because of the culture of the school, and that's where they want to go.
It's highest at kindergarten and first grade. If you look at the wait lists online, all of our wait lists are right online, and you can see the numbers there, and it's 25, 30 in kindergarten and first grade, and we were able to clear most of the wait lists at the upper grades.
Yes, that's true. And also, I was going to mention this a little bit later, but one of the things we did over the summer when we did have quite a high number of kindergarten enrollees, even still have a wait list, but we opened up another kindergarten class at Cabrillo, which helped bring that list down by quite a bit. Otherwise, we would have had even more.
Thank you.
Okay, so then in K and TK, we have 353 kinders in total. And we did open the additional class at Cabrillo, and 90.53% kinders were assigned to their first choice school. And in transitional kindergartens, we have 71 kinders, TKs enrolled. We also did open, and I'd forgotten about that, but we did also open an additional class at Sunset Ridge to accommodate the influx of TK students. And 86% of the TK students who enrolled and through the lottery were assigned to their first choice school.
And 14% assigned to their second choice school. Because there are two schools.
Oh, that's true. So then, let's see, the only other, I think piece to share with you that, and you've all already talked so much about your visiting to back to school nights. The back to school nights were very successful. We got some feedback about scheduling, but in terms of the feeling of the events and the kinds of things that were going on at each site, it seemed like families were very happy with those, and not the least of which this morning at our LMEC back to school night, which was just delightful to watch.
to see the things that are going on there is really fun to see. So all in all, it seems hard to believe that we've already been in school for a month, but this is kind of what we've captured to share with you since school opened. Any questions?
I already asked mine.
Okay.
Yes, Kathy.
Clarification on the enrollment, that wasn't it. On the special programs enrollment, you made a comment about our percentage being about 1% higher than the average.
Yes.
And then you said you'd like to bring that number down. How do you see?
10%.
Yeah, how do you see bringing that number down if those students need that special education?
And maybe not, maybe it doesn't go down necessarily, but I think it's important to, kind of make sure that the children who we are qualifying are indeed eligible and truly disabled. So there's, we want to make sure we're applying those rules as carefully as possible, so we're not inadvertently over-identifying students who maybe don't need to be in special ed. And also that we're exiting them in an appropriate manner also. Sometimes we get a little bit nervous about having kids exit because we don't want them, we want to make sure that they're successful, and we kind of need some help to understand how to set up a safety net for them outside of special ed so they can be successful in a less restrictive program if that's possible.
Okay.
So I think it's when it's such a small percentage, it's just sometimes a matter of just kind of being more mindful of our practices and maybe auditing, our cases to make sure we're doing things properly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
It's not I would be a lot more concerned if it was 14 or 15%.
Yeah.
Can I just add
Oh, yeah,
to that?
yeah.
I mean, I agree with you, but I'm not sure if it's really, so much over-identification. It could also be that we're applying PBIS practices so well that we're ameliorating their challenges before they need an IEP, right?
As a proactive.
Exactly, absolutely. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
we're supposed to be doing, right? So that's
Absolutely.
the other strategy that you didn't really talk about. But I mean, if you look at the spread of incidents of special education, that's well within the range, right?
Yeah.
But I agree with you. If it was up around 15%, then
Yeah.
we'd really have to start looking at how are we over-identifying,
Yeah, and sometimes that happens when we don't know what else to do and we know they need something. So, we have to boost up our menu of things, other things that can be done that are not necessarily that restrictive. I can tell, there are some districts on the peninsula who have an identification rate of 8 and 9%. So, it is possible that the numbers could be, I'm not saying that's what we need to do, but there is a range of, where's that threshold and are we really holding to it? So, just food for thought.
So is that up or down from last year and the previous year? Do you know?
That's a good
I
question.
don't know. I'd have to look. I think I don't recall, since last year was my first year, that it was dramatically different. I don't know about the history.
No, it'd be good to look at the trends over time, because that would be
totally.
worrisome as well, because if we're at 11% for the last 10 years, then
Right.
it's pretty steady.
Correct.
But if it's been,
But if
roller coaster
so
ride.
this is one of the good things about reporting it out here, is that if we report it out every year, we will be looking at it every year. So I can share that with you on an annual basis.
I think we cut you
And
off.
I just have one more question. Go ahead.
The only other clarification was on the enrollment. When you're talking about inter-district transfers, 140 incoming, and then you see that we have waitlisted 169, but inter-district transfers are secondary, correct? In terms of somebody getting their placement. So the inter-district transfers aren't getting some of the choices that the people that wanted to get their first choice that live in Pacifica would get. They'd be first, correct?
That's correct, because these are children who, the waitlisters are children who have gone through our enrollment process way before we start bringing in the new inter-district transfers.
Right, so they still had their choice for, okay.
That's correct.
Great, thank you.
Oh, I was just going to ask about the audit process for special ed. What does that look like?
Oh, it usually looks like, it could be county council and me looking through every case, or it could be me and a principal and a case manager looking through caseloads and just applying, certain checklists to make sure that we've done everything properly and so forth. Yeah, there's several different ways we can do it.
Sounds like a big task.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it can be done. I've done it before.
I have a quick question for you. You mentioned along the way in your presentation that the number of non-public school students we're sending out is about 5, and you said that puts us in a good place. What is a benchmark for good versus bad there?
For a district this size, I would say, 8 to 10 would be pretty acceptable.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, these are students who we feel we can't serve with our current cadre of resources, right? And staff.
Are there any other questions for Maria? So moving on to 11D, response to grand jury report on measles, and this goal is operations. Heather?
I just want to make sure that
We didn't
the student attendance is hiding up there.
Oh, yeah.
You just
Reverse.
saw my name and you thought I already told. Right.
So the student attendance and student attendance review team, SART, LCAP, goal number 3. Maria.
Yes. So this is just a little brief introductory data that now on our attendance, and we're starting to look a little more closely at our attendance patterns and to cultivate some tools that we can use to support our students. On the first page there, oops. On the next page, there we go. Okay, so this is just a little snapshot of data on students for last year, 18-19, who were absent 18 days or more, which is 10% of their school year. So overall, across the district, we had 5.69% students with a 10% absenteeism or higher. Across sites, there was a range of as low as 3.19% and all the way up to 10.69%. And most of the numbers in between clustered at the middle and low. So I would say the 10.69 is was a significant outlier compared to the other figures. Those figures, if you calculate that or conceive of that as number of days of school missed in a school year, it is as low as 21 days to 32 days. And that calculates to 4 to 6 weeks of instructional time in a school year. So when you start looking at it and thinking of it that way, it kind of hits really home what a significant amount of time some of our students miss, and that's on the higher end. There are students who miss 17 days and less, and that still can be significant depending on where they fall in that lower range. So just some takeaways from going through some of this introductory data that we looked at in preparation to share it with you is that a lower absentee rate doesn't necessarily tell us the story of an individual student impact from missing school. You could have a low or a medium absentee rate at a school, but if it's all spread out among 3 students, those 3 students are very, very impacted. They're kids who are missing significant amounts of school. we need to take a closer look at comparing this kind of information or setting ourselves up with tools and frameworks that we can compare by grade and by age or other demographics that, you know, we think are important to know more about. We want to look and start to be able to track what is the academic performance of the children who are missing this amount of school. We want to begin to learn how to customize interventions so that they are developmentally appropriate as well as circumstantially relevant to the students. So there may be a number of things that might be going on in any given case that would cause such a high rate of absenteeism. One response will not fit all, one size will not fit all. Also, we need to look at, you know, where is that child developmentally? If you're looking at a 5 or 6-year-old who has a high rate of absenteeism or a poor attendance, there's a different problem happening there than if you have an 8th grader who can't get out of bed and get himself to school, right? So we have to really start looking at drilling down to the individual cases to see what we can do to support those kids. And then I wrote compare lower thresholds. What I mean by that is that we want to look at the really high occurrences of absenteeism and kind of address those as a more immediate needs, but we don't want to disregard, you know, the lower impact also, and make sure that for those children who have a frequency of absenteeism that doesn't maybe get captured in that higher number, frequent absenteeism there still could be something going on. It's just not rising up to our radar. And so we need to pay attention to that group as well. So I mentioned at the last board meeting that we were starting a new project this year that we are really excited about, the school attendance review team. The work group for this team did launch last week, their first meeting. I put the members of the team there for you to see, so you can see who the participants are. They're very excited about this work. I think I saw a lot of enthusiasm, and it made me excited about it too. They're right now in phase 1 of their work group, which is about an 8 to 10 week period of time when they will meet on a very regular basis every other week, and they will start to identify an infrastructure, a system, a way of putting in a review process in place that is a seamless process that can be a handoff from the site level to, whatever the site level steps are that are being taken to address high absenteeism, and then that it can be then come up to the next level, which we're calling it district level. Again, the purpose of having this in place is to have some interventions that we can offer for families, and B, if possible, to divert this from rising to the next level, which is at the SARB process at the county level. And for those who may rise up to that level, one of the first things they will ask us is, did you do all these other things? So now we will have documentation of all the other things that we've tried to do in order to support the family and support the child. So after this 8 to 10 week building process, the team would like to plan to pilot some reviews and kind of just set that into motion and use the rest of the school year to kind of tweak it and enhance it and kind of work out the rough spots with the principals and in terms of the process. And so what I'm hoping to do is at the end of the year have them come and report back to you what the experience was like for the year and what other recommendations they have. Any questions? Yes.
So just a couple clarifying questions here. One, are absences, are unexcused absences only counted, or is it also excused absences as well?
Those numbers are excused and unexcused. They are not tardies that are counted as
It's just if the kid did not show up for whatever reason, whether it was valid or not. Okay.
Yeah.
And
But the trend that I saw just in looking at the data very roughly is that the higher the number went, the more likely that they were unexcused absences.
Sure. Sure, that makes sense. And then I guess this one might be for Josie, and I can never remember this, but if our excused absences not taken into account in our ADA, do they work against us?
Yeah, we do not get ADA unless they go on an independent study contract.
Okay, so regardless of what reason they're out,
So if they're out for a doctor appointment.
yeah, or something like that, then we just don't, they don't contribute to ADA. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so there's that piece too that, we probably want to look at more closely.
Well, I mean, if you're talking, I mean, we're talking about some significant numbers here, right? So, and if we don't have kids in the seats, we don't get paid. That seems fair, but it's another reason to work on it, right?
And to piggyback on that, I was actually thinking this, looking this over, a number of years back, and sports people might know when this was, but I know there was a time that the Giants kept having parades.
Oh, yeah.
And we had big numbers
Yeah.
of kids whose parents were like, this is a once in a lifetime, but then it was a once in a lifetime, like year after
Yeah.
year, but.
Every even year.
Yeah.
And they don't qualify as emergencies.
Right.
You can't get waivers from Sacramento.
So I know at that time, realizing that, we kind of made this sort of general outreach to the public, and it was done really well, and I can't remember the, Josie or somebody else might remember this, but they just did sort of blurbs to parents letting them know,
I remember
kind
that.
of, when your child misses, this is what we don't get, and sort of like another piece of the puzzle when you're gonna come and say, how come we don't have money for supply lists and things like that? You can say, well, because we do lose this much money. And it wasn't done in a way to guilt people or anything, but it was informational. And I haven't really seen us doing that in a while. So that might not really target more of these that are ongoing, but just sort of reminding people that those kind of events do have fiscal impact.
I think that's a really good point. I think like a preventative parent education or
Right.
community education information
Just another
sharing.
piece of the puzzle.
So I don't know if you all remember, but Harvard did a study that we were, I think, in the sample. So getting little postcards, or you guys might not remember, but because you didn't have school-age children at the time, but we got little postcards saying, how many days Johnny was absent this, up until this point of the year. And then it would have some information saying, statistical analysis shows that if Johnny is absent for more than 10% of the year, they will necessarily be on a separate trajectory, a lower trajectory in terms of academic performance. So I think that type of messaging is also fairly important. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think parents want their kids to go to school, and there's probably some other root causes that we have to get at, that, there's a reason why you can't get Johnny to school, that we have to, and it might not be the parents' fault.
Right.
So we have to understand that. Anyway, I'm really interested in this, especially in whatever findings you come up with, when you start doing any analysis. I would really like to see.
Sure.
I'm not going to crash your meetings or anything.
Oh,
but,
please, you're welcome. But speaking of what you just said, we are bringing in some community partners to work with us on setting this up. The county, Mary McGrath, who is the countywide person for this process, is coming to work with us at some of our meetings. Mary Beer is coming to meet with Heather and me to talk about, what are some of the community resources we can use. We're also kind of looking at this as another vehicle or tool, because attendance and discipline is often connected. There may not be isolated issues, so that we can also kind of use this tool as a way of helping to give some guidance on progressive discipline or non-discipline, and understanding what is it that this child needs, and let's do that for them.
I just have one comment, and it would be nice to know too how many of those students are falling into our partnering neighboring schools' vacation times. So, for example, if we have a different school break for 5 days, how many kids are actually missing? How many families, if they're going to Ortega and they have one at Terra Nova, are there like 10 kids, who are missing and adding on to that? And I know we try to coordinate it, but it's very difficult. So it would be nice to know, if we can kind of sequester those. No?
Yeah, I think the more we delve into this, the more information will surface for us. It's just, this is probably, going to be a several-year project, just kind of getting it where we are hoping it will go, so.
The important thing to think about is that if it's approximately 170 kids that miss 18 or more days of school, that's a month of school. And there are some kids that are very, very sick or medically fragile, and that makes sense. And so that's why this not one size fits all is a great way to look at it, is because then, it's meeting the needs of the kids and the families, but also saying our best intervention is to get you here to school.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Are there any resources for this? I mean, or are you guys just taking it out of your own skin?
No, there's all sorts of toolkits. I mean, there's free toolkits where you're kind of on your own, and we're going to have Nicole Ortega work with Maria and her team around doing that. There are also all sorts of companies that will craft that message and help get it out to you. We chose not to go with the paid source this year, so.
I mean, there's also research that some of my colleagues have done, and a lot of other people have done, which are looking at text messaging systems, right? And supposedly as a low-cost intervention, right? I'm not sure if I don't know the research well or not,
Right.
but they're supposed to be low-cost, very cost-effective, right? So I don't know, but I think you guys are on the right track. So thanks for doing this.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. So now we're moving on to response to grand jury report on measles, goal operations. Heather.
So we received a letter from the San Mateo County Grand Jury's report with several recommendations, and in the board packet was both the grand jury's recommendations and our response needs to be board approved. So are there any questions regarding our response?
So this is an action item. Do I have a motion to approve the district's response to the San Mateo County Grand Jury's report regarding measles and immunizations in San Mateo County?
I will motion.
Second?
I'll second.
And all those in favor?
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
11E, notice of intent to hire. This is under LCAP goal number 1. Maria.
Yes, this is, we're coming to you to ask for your approval to agree to support Ms. Kiana Nguyen, who is a fourth grade teacher at Sunset Ridge. She came to us literally almost the day before school started. She's a fabulous teacher. I spent a little bit of time with her in helping her prepare some of her paperwork, and she's reported that she's very happy in her classroom, and considering she's a first year teacher, she still had a smile on her face, so it was really great to talk to her. So Ms. Nguyen has just enrolled in a teacher credentialing program at San Francisco State. She meets all the minimum requirements for a provisional intern permit. The university has approved it, but the state needs the board's approval in order to actually issue the credential for her. So we recommend that you approve this so that we can go ahead and file her paperwork and get her situated.
Okay, are there any questions? Kathy?
So, I see that it notes that the Human Resources Department and Sunset Ridge have agreed to provide a mentor and training.
Yes.
Knowing how stretched our human resources is, and my understanding is Sunset Ridge, they're still waiting for their full-time teacher in charge or whatever. What does this look like?
It looks like another teacher. Usually it's a teacher on site that agrees to provide a certain number of hours of support and coaching for the new teacher. And we do a very, I wouldn't say it's a formal agreement. Megan mentioned something about this program that we will be talking about in more detail. I did it last year with a couple of our new special ed teachers. It's a matter of sitting down and agreeing to X number of hours of support for this teacher, so she has a mentor she can go to ask specific questions about, whether it's about instruction or classroom management, or even something about the culture of the school, just to help have him or her have somebody they can go to that's on site and available. It is a requirement of the university that they have that. So we really can't have her on board without it. So.
Do we provide stipends for
Yes.
mentors?
Hourly time cards at this point.
By the hour.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Okay, so do I have a motion to agree to support Ms. Kiana Nguyen obtaining her provisional internship permit to allow her to teach as the 4th grade teacher at Sunset Ridge School for the 2019-20 school year?
A motion?
Second?
I'll second.
And all those in favor?
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
All right. 11F, resolution number 2019-09-18-A, adoption of the GAN, Goal Operations. Josie.
Okay, thank you. So the GAN limit is a calculation that goes back to 1979 that the state established in order to limit the amount of appropriations a school district has from year to year, from one year to the next. And it's a calculation that's now done by the state software. So in this board agenda item, we have the board memo kind of summarizing the GAN, and then we have the resolution asking the board to approve setting the appropriations limit for the current budget year, which is 1920, and recognizing what it was for 1819. And then we also have a document attached, which is the actual GAN limit calculation. So, which is in a software, it's very easy to calculate now because it's in the state software. So for 2018-19, the GAN had been set at $25,149,000 and some odd change. And then for 2019-20, the estimated GAN is targeted at $26,102,000 and some odd change and it's based on the current year and an adjustment for your ADA, and it's basically, I know you didn't bring it up, but it's attached to the board agenda item. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, if anybody has any questions, but there is a resolution attached asking the board to set the GAN limit for the 2019-20 school year.
All right, does anybody have any questions regarding the resolution?
It's just a clarifying question. I mean, the genesis of the GAN limit was this guy Gann, my understanding, back in 1979, Prop 13 wasn't quite enough for him. He really wanted to limit appropriations to state appropriations to all public institutions. So basically the calculation here is trying to make sure that inflation-adjusted dollars have not gone up past their 1979 levels.
Yes.
And that's basically what it does, with some adjustments for ADA, because obviously, and so we should just all, I mean, it's funny that we have to vote on this, like we have a choice. I just wanted to put that down there, but we basically, I see it more as yes, the software is calculating this correctly, and I approve. Just wanted to put that on there, but I don't really agree with the reasoning behind the GAN limit.
Yes.
So I guess I'm putting it on.
It's an ed code requirement.
Yes.
Jesse, you can vote on it, but, there's different options, I'm just saying.
Anyway, I'm just not really sure if we don't, vote yes on approving it, then what happened, right?
Then we don't comply with the ed code.
Yeah, and that's not really an option.
That doesn't help us.
Yeah, that doesn't help us too much, so.
Then you'll have to repeat Masters in Governance.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I guess I'm just getting getting that on record for the better or for worse.
Good.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who has questions, concerns? So do we have a motion to approve resolution number 2019-09-18-A to adopt the GAN limit for the fiscal year 2018-19? Have a motion to approve? Motion to approve. Second? And all those in favor?
Board passes 5-0. Thank you.
11G, approval of the unaudited actuals for 2018-19. Goal operations. Josie.
Okay, thank you. This is also an action item. And the packet that is attached tonight, it's quite thick, but what it is a summary of all of the district's funds, from the general fund, the child nutrition fund, the bond fund, all of the funds are attached. And these are the actuals for the 2018-19 school year. In May, we presented you with what was called the estimated actuals based on how we have been ending the school year. These are the final actuals, and our auditors did come by a few weeks ago, and they did check all the revenues and expenditures in the unaudited actuals. They focused a lot on the state and the federal revenues and expenditures and did their audit testing. They did a full bond compliance audit. We did have some bond expenditures, but compliance also includes forming a committee and things like that. They did internal compliance here to make sure that we are following the proper protocols and procedures as far as how we maintain our books. And so the audit was completed on these numbers. The next step would be for us to send it to the County Office of Education. When you look at the numbers, they're pretty close to what we anticipated in May. There wasn't really much differences. Then normally you do have higher carryover balances in the general fund. And so on the memo page, on the second page of the board memo, I made a listing of the ending fund balances of where we actually ended up. And you'll see that some of the school sites had some site supply carryover and some SIPSA carryover. And some of that's timing because of they put in purchases and they're not spent until summer. We also had a lot more carryover in the lottery because the state always underestimates how much lottery you're going to get, both for unrestricted and restricted. And then when they give us our final numbers in August, they're always a little bit higher. And also because of the purchases that when we purchase textbooks and all those instructional materials, we don't receive them until the summer. So the funds carry over and are spent in July and August. We had carryover in the low performing student block grant and the classified professional block grant because the state didn't even give us those funds until near the end of last school year. And so those funds are carried over to be spent this year. So there is a listing of all the expenditures, everything. There's a lot of additional documents included in the unaudited actuals. For example, special education, are we meeting our maintenance of effort? Yes, and that's summarized on one of the first pages, the certification that they're asking to be signed. So there's a lot of calculations and they've been reviewed by our auditors and then they're also going to be reviewed by the county office. There wasn't really anything unusual in the audit or in closing the books. Things were pretty much in line with what we had said in May. I don't know if there's questions, it's a lot of information.
Forgive me if I've asked this before, because sometimes I repeatedly ask the same thing, but I'm wondering on these back pages where you have the past and, notations of everything that has been passed, the one that you didn't was on the debt activity, and could you just explain that to me, why that one says exception?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So in the back of the packet are called technical review checklists. And just so everybody knows what you're talking about, that's in the state software, and that is something that checks all of your numbers and checks that everything balances and that you've completed everything. So there's a lot of supplemental forms, and one of the forms that Kathy's talking about is what's called debt. And it lists your beginning balance of debt, which is, we don't have a lot of categories, but it's your general obligation bonds, your vacation accrual balances, any type of debt. And then it has activity, plus and minus, and your ending balance. And the error that you're looking at is a warning. It's not a fatal error, but it's a warning message just noting that there isn't activity. And so that form is really something that the auditors will finalize in their audit report. the actual debt payments and the actual reductions in the bonds. They do a whole schedule in the audit report, and so it's something that I have to admit I didn't spend a lot of time on because the auditors are going to prepare this document for us in the notes to the financial statements. And so that's why that warning message is there, because there doesn't show activity in that form.
So basically, you still have to reconcile payments on obligations.
Exactly, and it's not something
it's
that
just
I'm
not-
gonna, it's
Oh, I
not
see.
something that I'm
You're
gonna
just
do.
not caught up.
It's something the auditors are gonna do in their audit report.
Okay.
And then when we review that in January, you'll see the actual debt payments, the actual interest, and the actual
Okay.
principal amounts that were paid down, or what the actual balances are. It's a little bit more of a complicated calculation.
Right, okay.
But
Thank
that's a
you.
good question.
That was a great question.
Anybody else?
I have a question. This is probably going to be just as easy. But if I just look at the, it's the second or third page or whatever, and it compares our unaudited actuals from last year to our budgets for this year, right? And I'm looking at the revenues, and the state revenues look like they take a serious hit in terms of.
Are you looking at page 1 of Form 1?
I don't have the page number, but that sounds about right. Yes, it is page 1.
So the state revenue, you have your LCFF sources.
Yeah, I'm talking about the third line item.
The third line, yeah, there's a huge.
It's the other state revenues, sorry.
Yeah, there's a huge reduction there, and that, I can look back. So if we go to the page, let's look real quick. We reported the revenue for the classified professional development block grant, which was very small, 18,000, and the low performing student block grant, which was substantially larger, 300,000+ in 18-19.
Yeah.
So those revenues were recognized in 18-19, and then there's zero budgeted. And so if you go to page 5 of the Form 01, it'll show you the actual state revenues. And the mandated cost was also quite higher in 18-19 because there was some one-time mandated cost.
So these are state grants that were cliffs,
They're
basically.
what you would have called old categoricals. It just fluctuates from year to year. But you can see the details on
Okay.
page 5 of the
Thanks.
differences.
It would be really nice if if that first page was all hyperlinked, right? If you could just click and it would take you to page
Yeah.
5 or wherever
And then
that
it would
was.
have
Oh,
the summary.
Jessie.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Okay, so, do I have a motion to approve the preliminary financial statements for the 2018-19 fiscal year and authorize the superintendent to file the statements with the San Mateo County of Education?
I motion to approve.
I'll second.
And all those in favor?
Board passes 5-0, thank you.
11H, call for nominations for CSBA Directors at Large, African American, American Indian, and County Goal Governance. Heather?
This is our opportunity to make a nomination for, we don't actually get to nominate for county, but for African American or American Indian directors at large. Are there any questions? Any nominees? Okay, we will take no action at this time.
Unless you all want to, I'm not opposed to doing it, but I'm new, so I wasn't going to volunteer for it, but since you're not going to be able to do it, it's up to you guys. If you nominate me, I will go for it.
I think it's up to you as well. Are you interested?
Well, I mean, I'm interested, but I'm new, and so, you need to, there's a recommendation involved, and, there's more to it than I.
Is it too much with the Masters in Governance classes and everything on your schedule?
I can manage it, so.
I just have a comment, because, that's the same thing I thought when it first came up 4 years ago. And so I don't think there's ever a good time, it's life.
It's not a good time, but the reason why I didn't say anything last time is because you were interested, and also I'm new. So it really comes down to if you all feel confident in me, then yeah, I'll go for it.
I would fully support your nomination.
Okay.
Like
Yeah, that's up to
fully.
you
Like
guys.
you have my full confidence.
Okay.
So, but again, for me, I don't want to push you into it. Are you interested?
I'm interested, but
Yeah.
like I said, I was like, oh, I'm new, so maybe I should hang back for a bit. But it's totally okay with me, so if you guys want to.
So we have a
it's up to you.
nomination.
Well, that's fantastic.
We've never had one of these.
So, do I have a motion to elect Kai Doggett for CSBA Directors at Large, African American, American Indian, and County?
I motion to elect Kai.
Second? And all those in favor?
Board passes 4-0. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to board bylaws, board policies, and administrative regulations. Goal, governance. 12A, July 2019 manual maintenance 1000-9000 series, first reading.
I had two basic categories. One was around updating media relations to be slightly more current than they were in the past and to address emergency planning, the role of media relations in emergency planning. And then the second one was around closed session. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I will bring them to, what's that called?
Second reading?
Consent. I'm still on Eastern time here.
All right.
I'll bring them to consent at our next meeting.
Okay, so moving on to 12B, July 2019 manual maintenance 6000 series, first reading. Will.
Yes, so I have a number of ARs, and not a number, actually, a few ARs and board policies to bring forth. The first one, I'll just go quickly through it, is the administrative resolution of athletic competition. There's basically the revisions I made. It's a CSBA sample with revisions. It's the deletion of all language that pertains to high school. Most of the language in there refers to CIF, which is a collegial interscholastic federation, which is a high school athletic thing. But it does include, in that deletion, it does include the deletion of the opioid fact sheet that they are requiring all basically high school athletes parents to be informed of. So that's AR 6135 22. And then there's board policy and AR 6174, which refers to education of English learners. And that also was a policy that updated the new law that denying English, that you can't deny English learners core curricular areas. Again, that's mostly for high schools. Like the English learner would be denied a certain course, a core course, because they were taking a remedial English course or something like that. So that's not allowed based off the new law. And then also there's a time frame that we do have to oblige by notifying parents of child's LPAC scores, and it's clearly defined the amount of days that we have to have those scores out to families after the test contractor has delivered them to us. And then the last one is the supplemental instruction, and that one is an update to a current law requiring provisions of remedial instruction to students who are recommended for retention and or identified as being at risk. It also references the deletion of program improvement, Title I program improvement, which doesn't exist anymore. And it also talks about or clarifies schools that are identified as comprehensive or targeted school improvement. We presently do not have schools that are targeted school improvement or comprehensives for school improvement. So it's presently, the policy would apply if we did in the future. And then there's also some deletion of language that pertains to high school. So that was another policy that was with revisions.
Does anybody have any questions? So that's kind of just where we're going. We have the future agenda items.
So our next meeting is on Thursday, October 10th, because of the Jewish holiday being on Wednesday. And when we meet on the 10th, one of the things we need to do is With Kai being nominated, part of her application packet is a recommendation from the board. I'm happy to write it, but it has to come from the board, so you will have to approve the letter of recommendation that we write for Kai. So we'll add that on as district business.
And just notice that their invitation is
Yeah.
for the same
Yes.
night as our board
Exactly.
meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we can't be
just pull
too
that up.
social.
No.
Of course we can.
There we can, yes, of course. Yeah. Any other items that come to mind? It's gonna be a busy couple weeks. That being said,
So, meeting is adjourned at 8:54 PM.